So maybe we should look at some examples where things have gone poorly and things are going better. So we can, for example, look at, say, China, which unfortunately uses its technology to do mass surveillance and suppress dissenting views and information.
Whereas in the West, we don't have mass surveillance.
Oh, no, I was going to say.
You're surveying the shit out of it.
My next line was the West, of course.
Come on. A little bit of
I was trying to be inclusive.
Self-awareness here.
East and West.
Google is surveying us just as successfully as, the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay.
Maybe more successfully.
I mean, just as a show of hands, how many people want to give up Google search, Amazon? Would they really want to go back? I'm just curious.
Did I suggest that?
No.
I suggest we socialize your company in order to use it more productively.
I mean, where would we have been during the pandemic if we didn't have Amazon, Zoom, right? I mean,
we want your technology. We do not want the property rights over it by a tiny, tiny minority who use it against the interests of humanity.
Okay, so
大家好，今天要分享的是希腊前财政部长亚尼斯·瓦努法基斯与一位谷歌高管的精彩对话。瓦努法基斯是希腊著名的经济学家、学者和政治家，他曾在2015年担任希腊财政部长，以其在欧元集团会议上的强硬立场和批判主流经济政策而闻名。同场嘉宾是谷歌 DeepMind 的首席人工智能研究员。当他谈到科技被用来监控民众并把矛头对准中国时，瓦努法基斯毫不留情地揶揄嘲讽并予以驳斥。他对当今大型科技公司权力的高度集中表达了自己的担忧，并提出解决方案。这位谷歌高管仍试图为自己的东家及其他大型科技公司辩解，但在瓦努法基斯清晰的逻辑面前显得苍白无力，甚至无言以对。我们来看看他们是怎么说的。
Are we in control of big tech, or is big tech in control of us?
From time immemorial, the human condition has been marked with a tragedy, the tragedy of our relationship with technology, and the wild beauty of it. All those machines, from Talos to Frankenstein to the invisible hand, fill our hearts with horror that maybe they're taking over, maybe they're failing badly, maybe we are victims of it. This is not a new problem. What is new, and this is where I want to concentrate, is that unbeknownst to people like Tim, who are doing very interesting work, in Silicon Valley, in Shenzhen, wherever those big tech companies are located. As I said, unbeknownst to them, they have invented a new form of capital. You see, capital predates capitalism by tens of thousands of years. From the first moment that we created a tool is a produced means of production. So you create a plow, not because you want it, but because you want to use it in order to produce corn. That's what capital is. The steam engine was produced to produce textiles. For the first time, these folks, and I point at him because he's on the pan, they've created a mutant form of capital, because what lives in these phones and tablets is not a produced means of production. It is that as well when it helps operate machinery. But in the social media, in what we mean daily by big tech, it produces an exorbitant power to modify our behavior. For the first time in human history, our behavior is not modified only by poets, novelists, politicians, vicars, and so on, but it is modified directly by produced means, by machines. That is what I am particularly concerned with, has already usurped, overturned what we knew as capitalism, has replaced markets with fiefdoms, and it has put in train a process by which we face a clear and present danger of total social failure, total economic fragmentation. It's not the fault of the machinery, it's not the fault of the algorithms. It is our incapacity to reshape our social relations, the way we relate with one another, our relations of power with one another, so that we can make good use of the machines rather than become victims.
So I think, an absolute statement that big tech has stolen our autonomy is simply the wrong way to think about it. Let's take a step back for a moment, and I think there may be a better way to think about things are in terms of two concepts I'd like to put forward, and that's in terms of trade-offs and responsibilities. So let's start with the first one. When it comes to trade-offs, that's simply asking the question of what do we want and what is the price we're willing to pay for it. And so when it comes to big tech and freedom, the trade-off that's relevant is the trade-off between freedom to and freedom from. So undeniably, tech has bolstered our freedom to do a great many things. Today, we now have unlimited access to information and goods from all over the world. And so tech has really democratized the world's resources to all of us. Also, the ongoing revolution in artificial intelligence promises to boost our ability to do many creative and productive things. So that's really where tech shines. It enables us to do great many things. Now, of course, the trade-off is that this requires tech to become more embedded in our lives. And so the consequence is that we have a shrinking ability to have freedom from technology. And that's clear in our dependence on technology. We rely on online services like email, maps, and payments. And so it's very hard to imagine how we can fully disconnect from technology. So we can see how technology itself is really kind of navigating this tension between being empowered to do so many things while also possibly being constrained by how technology shapes and limits some of our autonomy. Indeed, we might even often cede autonomy to our tech, right? Because we want it to do some of the work for us. We want to delegate, say, fighting fraud and doing content moderation. And so we see that there is this tension between doing things and letting go of things. And so that brings me to that other point I mentioned, which is about responsibility, right? We want our systems to be built responsibly because we are giving control to them, and not necessarily in a bad way. We want it to do some of the work for us. Now, it's a little bit, of course, vague and open-ended what it means for technological systems to be responsible. So maybe we should look at some examples where things have gone poorly and things are going better. So we can, for example, look at, say, China, which unfortunately uses its technology to do mass surveillance and suppress dissenting views and information.
Whereas in the West, we don't have mass surveillance.
Oh, no, I was going to
You're surveying the shit out of
My
it.
next line was the West, of course.
Come on. A little bit of
I was trying to be inclusive.
self-awareness here.
East and West. Okay.
Google is surveying us just as successfully as, the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay. Well,
Maybe more successfully. Sorry for the interjection, but I just burst.
Yeah, there are definitely examples here in the West. I mean, close to home, Cambridge Analytica, right? Privacy breaches, harvesting personal data to do targeted advertising and sway elections. But of course, there are good things about technology and progress being made. We have, for example, GDPR to do as a regulatory agreement to state how we ought to use personal data. And so, in the interest of time, what I want to say is technology has trade-offs, right? As I mentioned, it can be used for good and bad. And so we need to think about how to responsibly use technology just because, again, it depends on which hands it falls into and it can be used well or poorly. So that's my position.
I mean, with technology, it almost seems like we don't know what is behind the technology and how we're losing autonomy and control. So where are we on that? Are we free to choose?
Well, to avoid speaking in the abstract, let me give you an example. A new app was went out 7 months ago in the United States, which is, you can think of it as Uber for nurses. So in the hospital system, where nursing jobs are being denigrated, constantly losing their stature, and they're being casualized, now there's this new app where nurses can get different postings, different days, different hours, different weeks. And this app combines data on particular nurses with their credit history and their credit card debt, so as it knows which nurse, male nurse, female nurse, is more desperate for cash on particular days and reduces the rate offered to him or her during that day. So Then of course, you have Palantir and you have Microsoft and you've got Google and you've got Amazon, who are running today the war machine of Israel, the total surveillance of every Palestinian and every Israeli actually in the land of Palestine, of Israel. And in this context, your question, I think, is redundant. Of course, we do not choose which technology. You've got a tiny number of big tech companies which make decisions usually against the views of people working in these companies. So again, I have to mention Google, because Google started quite a few years ago. Remember the motto, do no harm. And I think that most Googlers, and I met quite a few of them, as I was telling Tim at the beginning, I had the privilege of addressing them and giving a speech in their original campus. They were people who were enthusiastic about this idea of producing new services, democratizing the tools and so on. And you saw what happened with Google. Eventually it got into defense procurement and it went to bed with the IDF in Israel. It bought Wiz. It is working with Elbit in order to weaponize the manner in which migrants are being monitored at the US-Mexican border. So existing malignancies in our political and social sphere are being weaponized by this exorbitant power of machines that have escaped the control of the people who are creating and designing them in these big companies.
Okay. But seriously, I mean, look, Google is a very large organization, right? It's almost 200,000 employees globally. So it's almost like a country, right? And given that it's such a large organization, there are kind of different pockets and things like that. So I can only speak from my personal experience, but certainly one of their mottos is respect the user, right? And so I don't want to focus too much on my own personal experience, but we do undergo constant training of how to you should never access user data without needing the use case, et cetera, et cetera. So I do very much feel the ethos of responsible data usage and whatnot. But let me go back to maybe the more global issues. So there's just me as an employee, which I do feel, at least on a day-to-day basis, that I'm not working for like a tobacco company or whatnot. But in terms of back to this bigger question of the role of big tech and the speed at which technology is moving, I mean, let me just take a step back and what I want to say is that in some sense we don't really have that much control over many things. We don't have that much control over, the way our food is made, how our clothes are made. And so I think maybe it's good to set the baseline of what it means to have control. So maybe that's one thing I want to say. The world is a very large place and we really just don't have that much control over anything. So maybe technology is not an exception in that regard. Maybe the other thing I want to say is that at least here in a capitalist society, there is a form of empowerment such that, these technology moves quickly, which means that rival companies form all the time. So companies need to make their apps useful for the broader public because either people will not use them, a rival will open up. And so what I want to say is that, notwithstanding all the negative consequences of capitalism, you do need to make your services useful to people. And there is a kind of public accountability, right? When there are data breaches, when there are failures in the recommendation algorithm, or when LLMs produce bad content, there is a corrective mechanism, right? It's not like a totalitarian society, at least in our society, where no matter how bad things are, it's going to stay that way. Companies do react to bad press. And so I think there is a correcting mechanism.
Tim, you said that people who actually produce the algorithms, they never do it with bad intent. I agree. I'm sure. I mean, there might be some real bastards out there who are designing algorithms with bad intent, but I don't believe there are. And even if they are, they're the exception. But I want to use a particular example of dual-use algorithms. So there are algorithms that have emerged from Google and from others that are the epitome, the apotheosis of the human spirit and achievement. So the fact that we have AI programs which design antibiotics that can kill bacteria that otherwise would have killed people in hospitals. This is great. This is, congratulations, well done. But we have to remember and not forget that the same kind of algorithm has been used by, I won't say anything about, your employer, by Amazon, in order to use whatever data is being collected in Amazon warehouses, because, in Amazon warehouses, workers have one of these things strapped to their wrist as they're going around the business in the Amazon warehouse, taking, packages from here to there. The machine tells them where to go, it monitors them and so on. But it also monitors who they talk to, how the proximity of different workers together. All this data, using the same kind of AI algorithms that design beautiful antibiotics for killing bacteria, the same AI program predicts, it's a mathematical statistical model for predicting the probability that Kathy or Bruce may start a union in one of the particular warehouses. And when that probability estimate exceeds a certain threshold, then either they get fired or that particular warehouse is mothballed. So it's not the AI fault. It is the fault of, whether these are rights enhancing technologies or rights annulling technologies. It depends on our labor law, on the extent to which unionization is made possible or effectively undermined through mafia-like behavior of big tech and other companies, whether we understand that these technologies give you exorbitant power if you are the sole owner of it. And if you care about democracy, you can't possibly believe that the people who invent these technologies have the right to have exclusive property rights over them. As I said in that talk that I gave at Google, I said to them, congratulations for having created human rights. Because, the right to use the Google search engine when it was really well before AI, it has become almost a human right now. The problem is that if you have invented a human right, you no longer have the right to own it. It needs to be socialized. So socialize big tech.
I feel like tech is not being given enough credit. I mean, just as a show of hands, how many people want to give up Google search, Amazon? Would they really want to go back? I'm just curious.
Did I suggest that?
No.
I suggest we socialize your company in order to use it more productively.
I mean, where would we have been during the pandemic if we didn't have Amazon, Zoom, right? I mean,
we want your technology. We do not want the property rights over it by a tiny, tiny minority who use it against the interests of humanity.
Okay, so I don't disagree with that.
瓦努法基斯在他最新的著作中提出了一个全新的概念——科技封建主义。他认为资本主义正在被这种新的、更原始的体系所取代，其核心特征是像谷歌、亚马逊、Meta 这样的大型科技公司不再是传统的生产者，而是变成了数字封建领主。他们的主要收入来源不再是销售产品，而是通过其建立的数字平台和生态系统来收取地租。例如，谷歌通过应用商店向开发者收取 30% 的过路费，亚马逊在它的电商平台上向第三方卖家收取佣金和费用。谷歌和 Meta 通过收集用户数据，在广告市场上扮演数字地主的角色，企业必须支付费用才能接触到平台用户。无论是用户还是中小企业，都深度依赖于这种平台进行社交、商业和获取信息。这种依赖关系类似于封建时代农奴对领主土地的依赖。还有一点，就是这场谈话中所谈到权力的高度集中。这些科技公司通过其垄断性的平台、算法和海量数据，获得了前所未有的社会、经济和政治权利，能够塑造公共舆论、操纵选举、影响政治，甚至破坏民主进程。这位谷歌高管辩解称，我们公司很大很复杂，个人感觉公司的道德培训还不错， 并称他相信市场竞争和公共问责能对大型科技公司形成有效的纠正机制，但始终只能是在问题的表层打转，无法回应瓦努法基斯对权力和所有制的根本性质疑。最后，他问观众谁舍得放弃谷歌和亚马逊，试图将瓦努法基斯的科技社会化的主张曲解为要毁灭这些技术。瓦努法基斯明确回应，我们需要你们的技术，但不能让少数人占有产权。从现场观众的掌声中，我们可以看出民众对其主张的认同，因为瓦努法基斯指出了问题的根源是所有制和权力结构。在科技封建主义下，这些公司已经拥有了堪比甚至超越民主国家的权利，却不受相应的问责和约束。他的科技社会化主张正是试图将这些关键的数字基础设施重新置于大众控制之下，以挽救被侵蚀的人类自主性和控制权。当然，中国也有自己的大型科技公司，瓦努法基斯所指出的问题或多或少也同样存在，既要鼓励公司做大做强，同时又要避免上述那些弊端，对于中国来说也是一个全新的课题。国家体制的不同会不会带来不同的结果？中国的管理方式会不会成为一个好的样板？欢迎在评论区谈谈你的看法。